Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Hello Central, coming to you from Nome, Alaska, on Front Street, the day after the end of the Iditarod dog sled race, one of the great races, one of the great events on the planet. How many teams were there this year? 70 some odd teams. 69 teams leaving Anchorage, and through weather and terrain you just wouldn't believe. My guest sitting next to me is a dear friend and a true hero, a hero of this race and a hero of mine. And Martin Boozer, thank you so much for being with me on this show. And I know you're going to get on a plane in just a few minutes, but I do want to tell the folks out there, because this show goes out not just to the folks in Nome, as it has for so many years, but it's now we're going into high tech. So we're downstreaming this, and people can watch this online, which I'm very, very excited about, all over the world. Nome's about 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. We're 100 miles from the Bering Strait, and we are a town that is in the middle of a second gold rush. And the Iditarod, this wonderful race, celebrates the bringing of diphtheria serum to Nome in 1925, and there was no epidemic. I had a conversation with a guy from Fairbanks talking about how much better a race the Yukon Quest was. And I said, it's a bit longer and the terrain's cool, but the Iditarod starts within its heart, within a humanitarian act. And I said, that just still pulls at me. And this is the 42nd running of the Iditarod. And Martin, welcome to Nome. You've come across the line, the finish line as a winner several times.
I was fortunate to do that, but even more fortunate is I finished all 31 starts that I had.
31 starts. Is that a record? I think it must be close to that.
I don't know starting-wise, but I know it's a record for finishing.
Is it? I'm sure it is.
Yeah, like my good friend Didi Jonro this year started, and she has as many or maybe one or two more starts, but she hasn't been able to finish them all.
The Didi Jonro, who is such a favorite in Alaska, Alaskans love her. Talk about grit and wonderful use word chutzpah. And boy, I'll tell you, Didi has overcome many things, and this trail is not an easy trail. This year was particularly hard on it.
It was unprecedented. I think this year it was probably a bad call to start in Anchorage. There's an alternate route that we've taken once in 42 years, where we actually start in Fairbanks and avoid the southern part of the Alaska range, avoid the interior part of the Alaska range, and bypass all those trail challenges by just going down the river system. The race organization felt it could be manageable to be done with a bunch of professional dog teams, and we did. All of us started. Most of us came through the challenging first 200 miles, and a testimony that it was safe is very, very few dogs had any issues with it at all. So
the little bit I've heard is the scuttlebutt on Front Street as the mushers come in, and listening to KNOM, which does such wonderful coverage of Iditarod, is that the race this year was so much more difficult on the mushers, on you guys and women, and on the sleds.
It was a true test of equipment, dog care, and mushers' driving ability. And then it continued on like that. Normally you might have a rough spot in the trail. Rough spot meaning a couple 100 miles or 100 miles or 50 miles or something. Yet this time, when we finished one notorious challenging rough spot, we got onto another one. It was like it was a never-ending challenge of 1,000 miles of what can we throw at you next, So you want glare ice? Well, that's pretty challenging. How about glare ice with a 20-knot side wind? Okay, well, let's throw that at you at Golovin Bay, and then you leave White Mountain, and what wind wasn't enough for you? Well, let's see what you do with let's dial it up to a 50-knot wind.
Good Lord.
Oh. 50-knot wind is not enough for you? Let me throw some ice under it, So every step of the way it was, okay, how about making it even more difficult, So that was absolutely unique of this 2014 Iditarod.
I've seen you come off the trail many times, Martin, and you've been on this show before. God bless you. You look like it looked like a hard trail. It was hard on you. I can look at your face, and you're tired, and you need a lot of rest.
Well, I was totally dissolved at the end because for hundreds of miles, I literally didn't know whether I would finish, which is challenging, but there was a chance that I would not live, which is pretty terminal, So the last lay down I had, the last challenge. Fortunately, my friends thought I was at Tommy Johnson's cabin, because from the stop tracker, we carry those spot trackers, and we're followed, monitored closely. The spot tracker is not direct enough or not accurate enough, but I know if you overlay a map, you can see where I was hunkered down, right in between two shelter cabins. And it wasn't life or death yet. I didn't see my life flashing by my eyes, or I wasn't, hitting, I wasn't regretting my woes and, enjoying my victories. But it was very, very, very difficult. It's the first time I've been in a wind that was so strong that would knock you off my feet.
Good Lord.
That, you never know how long that's going to last.
And you're not, you're certainly not the only one to talk about this. And for those of you who didn't follow the race and who don't follow the race, another past champion, a wonderful guy, Jeff King, 22 miles just this side of Nome, right before 2 miles before the last checkpoint. Now this is a race. This is 1,049 miles. And the guy has come all that way, and the wind, 45-mile-an-hour wind, just blew his dogs and his sled into a driftwood pile. It took him forever to kind of untangle the dogs, and then, as dogs might do every now and then, just said, "We've had it," and they didn't want to run anymore. Is that a fair kind of?
Well, I don't know what his situation was. My situation was simply that they couldn't comprehend the complexity of the situation. If you're a dog and you have to buck 40 or 50 knot winds all the time, you gladly do that if you know the purpose. But if you're at nighttime and even more wind and all those situations together, pretty soon the dogs will swing with the direction of the wind, and they say, this makes even more sense to us to go where the wind is blowing us. And if you cannot relate your importance or your wisdom of no guys, we gotta buck that wind in order to get to point B. If you can't get that message across anymore, then the dogs will simply outvote you. They will say, okay, well, you're confusing us. You want us to go where it's harder. This is easier. We decide easier is better. And then they possibly don't want to go anymore. I was fortunate not to get in that situation, and maybe I was foresightful enough to say, okay, guys, we're stopping here, rather than go into an impossible situation. And that's always the call. You gotta be able to pull the plug, so to speak, and say, okay, we're going to rest here in order to make the next 22 miles or the next 5 miles or sometimes the next 2 miles. It's just, you gotta read the dogs to the point where what's physically possible, what's mentally possible.
Do you sense what they're doing? You sense exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely. We're a unit. We're one unit, one team, one group of individuals. I just happen to only have 2 legs, which is a huge disadvantage. Huge disadvantage.
To having 2 legs.
Having 2 legs, it's just small. It's I can maneuver so much more difficult than they can. So they outrun me, but I make it up in 2 or 3 more brain cells, so I have 2 or 3 more than they do, and that means I have to do thinking and the planning and the staging of okay, we're going to go from here to here, and then you get a rest, and then we're going to go there, and you're going to get a rest. So we're basically the fuelers. We also happen to be the owners, the lovers, the coaches, the nursemaids. So we're really a part of the team. We're all of the above, and we're all together. And none of the individuals could exist without the other. Wow. That's the important part, is that the dogs really do all the physical work, but the driver is doing all the mental work.
This is my 27th Iditarod. I'm always amazed. To me, it's quintessential Alaska. It's Robert Service. It's all of Jack London. It's all of that. The adventure of it. The terror. The all of it. The all of it. Moments of great beauty. How many times I've heard? I think you talked once about seeing the Yukon River frozen below you and the northern lights on top. You know, it's just absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And it is this. It is an incredible race. Martin, can I tell a story on you?
Of course.
Because
as long as it's true.
It's true. It's true, and it's just. I've been asked. I get around the state quite a bit, and I represent Nome. And recently, I was asked, what are the two most wonderful moments in the Iditarod? What are your two moments in the Iditarod? And I said, well, I know the first one. And I said, I get a little verklempt. I get a little misty-eyed when I tell this story. And I don't remember the year. But Martin, who is by birth Swiss, has become a United States citizen. Now, that's not such an easy thing to do. It takes a fair amount of study. Those of us born here take this really for granted. Martin took the first part of his final oath, as I understand it, in Anchorage. At the start of the Iditarod, 2002. I didn't realize it was right after 2001. 9/11 was it the year after?
9/11 was the impetus. 9/11 was the impetus of me becoming Alaskan. See, I was Swiss on paper, Alaskan at heart, but not a United States citizen. I was Alaskan enough I don't care. I don't need to be a U.S. citizen. But coming from the safest nation in the world, Switzerland, where the Swiss, they could burrow underground, they could live in the mountains for decades, even in a Holocaust. So to prove to my children and my wife that this is the soil I would want to defend, Tuesday afternoon, the day after 9/11, I applied for naturalization. That's when the work began for me to become a United States citizen.
And there's a lot of work. There's
just applications, and you have to prove that you can write a sentence. You know, I had to write, "She had a big dog." I spelled that correctly, you know, in interviews and all that. And at one point, I called my senator, Uncle Ted Stevens was still alive, you know, and
Saint Ted.
Saint Ted.
Saint Ted, man.
I said, Senator Ted, he says, what legislation do I need to enact to get this done? I said, simple letter of recommendation would be appreciated, you know. So after a while of preparing for the citizenship, we said we should do it right during Iditarod. So the INS people met me at the start of the race with my first little American flag, and the paperwork to be carried and signed by Judge Ash here in Nome under the Burled Arch at the finish line.
And that was the moment that was so moving, because you came in the night, I think, and you were on the Burled Arch. It was beautiful daylight.
Well, what happened is I happened to set a record.
Oh, that was a record-breaking year, too. That's right.
I won the race, which was, I was going to run the race anyway. I won the race in unprecedented time. 8 days, 22 hours, 46 minutes, and 2 seconds. But who's counting? First time ever the race had been done in under 9 days.
That's right.
100 yards from the finish, my son Nikolai met me with a big American flag that I carried across the finish line. And then Ben Esch eventually swore me in under the Burled Arch. And then we completed to what we call the trifecta. My wife, my 2 children, 12 and 14 at the time. We took our 4 snowmobiles and we drove every step of the way home.
Down the trail you went down I didn't realize that.
A true victory lap.
Oh,
just for the people,
how cool.
Just for the people in the villages and our own selves.
But I want to go to this moment, this under the arch, because there were several hundred people, and it was a beautiful day, and it was very still. It was a gorgeous, clear Arctic day that just a snap to the air. And you started to take the oath, and Ben was reading the oath. And if you're an American citizen who was born here, you have no idea, unless you've heard someone become a naturalized citizen, where you pledge your allegiance to America. And it's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. You could have heard a pin drop. You could have heard a pin drop on Front Street. It was one of the most moving things. It makes me, as an American, appreciate what I have so much more. And when I hear you tell that story, Martin, again, bravo, bravo,
thank you.
Bravo. Bravo.
Yeah,
You're a good man. You're a good man.
Apparently, I don't only cry when I do bad in the race, huh?
Oh,
I cry when I
absolutely.
do well
Yeah,
as
but
well.
I want you to know I'm a sucker. I cry at the beginning of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. You know, I mean, I see an American flag and I'm gone. Martin, I wish you a safe trip home.
Thank you very much.
And at 31 finishes, sir, good God Almighty.
Ridiculous.
Isn't it? Good Lord Almighty. But I wish you well and wish the family well, Roan and Nikolai and Kathy, of course. And again, on a personal note, thanks for the memorial to Lori, a dear friend of ours, and she was a hero, as you are a hero of mine. And Kathy, you're a hero too. You put up with all of this crap. God love you. Hello, Central. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I want you to have a safe trip home and a
Thank
good
you very
race
much.
next year.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Martin Boozer. Thanks very, very much, Martin. Yay!
Thank you.
You bet,
Thank you.
you bet, you bet. Okay.